you've got the corporate groups, right? And not in a bad way, but you've got the SCIs and the foundation and all these corporate groups, and you have incredible people that work for those organizations. But generally speaking, if you work for an SCI, you may not have an opportunity to meet some of the women who work with, say, Parklawn as an example, because it's not bad. They just are doing their own thing and they're doing their own thing. And so sometimes it's just giving access to the energy, the mind, the learning from women sort of outside of those silos that otherwise you would just never have the opportunity to meet. So, and just for the purpose of connection, I think a lot of times people think, oh, I'm trying to leave or I'm trying to get, it's not for any of that. It's just, I just want to connect with other like-minded women and having that opportunity.
Welcome to the Direct Cremation Podcast with your hosts, Tyler Yamasaki and Will DeMichaelis. Hi, thank you for joining us on the Direct Cremation Podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Yamasaki, CEO of Parting Pro. And as always, I'm here with my co-host, Will DeMichaelis, funeral home consultant and former manager of the Omega Society, a cremation brand that served over 4,500 families per year. If you like this content, please give us a like, subscribe, or comment. All right, so the Death Care Collective is a group of death care women dedicated to fostering connections, strengthening relationships, and empowering women in death care professions. Founded by 9 women with nearly 150 years of combined death care service, the Death Care Collective could be a powerful force in the future. Will and I are excited to learn more about the collective today with the co-founder, Erin Creger, who also serves as the co-owner and chief sales officer of Envision Strategic Partners. Please welcome to the podcast, Erin.
Hello. Hi, Will. Hi, Tyler. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. So a big reason why we wanted to have you on is because after hearing about the group, Will and I really felt compelled to learn more about it, given, the trends of females in the workforce, and they will probably become the majority in the next 5 to 10 years. We really felt that this could be a powerful and influential force in death care coming up. We'll start from the top, but could you maybe talk about how this group started or came about?
I would love to. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. Part of why I love it so much is it really happened so organically. If you would have asked any of us even 2 years ago, if we thought this was nothing, we have goals or vision boards or whatever it is. No one had the Death Care Collective on a vision board. And it happened just so beautifully. So if we kind of think back to that dark, dark place back in the pandemic, and those of us that are slightly extroverted or really get energy off social connections were struggling. Everyone was struggling, but people who really thrived on networking and connecting, we just didn't have opportunities for that organic connection. So I was on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. And, you kind of bounce around people's pages or you see their comments. And a gal who I had never met in person, we really worked sort of in different silos where we probably never would have crossed paths. But she reached out and I got a message I noticed on my inbox and said, hey, I've seen some of your stuff on LinkedIn and I just love you and your energy. And I was just wondering if you'd be interested in having virtual coffee sometime, which I'd never even heard that term. And I thought, well, that sounds lovely. You get all sorts of weird messages, but I could tell this was just so genuine and kind. And so I said yes. And that was Miss Olga Peeler, who has become a very dear friend, but I had never met in person before that encounter. So we hopped on for a 30-minute virtual coffee, realized we could have been there for 3 hours. But I had another meeting and I said, I can't remember which one of us suggested, but we basically said, well, this was fun. What if we turn our virtual coffee into virtual cocktails? Which remember when people do virtual cocktails during the oh, it makes me cringe a little bit. But it was at the time, it was incredible. And so I said, yes, let's do that. I was so excited. But I said, let me invite one of my other friends. And that was a gal I had worked with who was with Homesteaders Life. It still is. Her name's Jamie Dravecki. And I said, Jamie, just trust me. We're having this virtual cocktail. I don't know much more about it, but you should join us. And so the 3 of us just hit it off. And we started talking. And I had thought in the past about doing some sort of book club. I just really love connecting people. And so much of my success I'm so grateful for is because of people I've been connected to and through. And I had really been missing that. And so the 3 of us decided, let's start a book club. And so we thought of the brilliant, succinct name of Women in Funeral Service Book Club, which It worked, right? Okay, I got the point across. Yeah, exactly. We couldn't really do an acronym and we didn't think it would really go anywhere. And we were pleasantly surprised that we'd have anywhere from 10 to 25 women on any of our monthly book clubs. And at the end of each book club, we would vote on the next book, and it was fun. So that following year, which would have been 2021, I believe 2021, make sure I'm getting this right. No, 2022. I'm sorry. We were all together for ICCFA in Vegas for their annual convention when it was in Vegas that year. And we decided, well, anyone who's here with the Women in Funeral Service Book Club, let's get together for breakfast. And so we decided to get together, and there were about 8 of us actually at breakfast. And we had this moment, and I still get goosebumps every time I think about it, where we were all connecting. Many of us hadn't ever met in person and didn't know each other before this. I did know 1 or 2 of the women prior, just from work and colleagues, but we just all had this like collective pause and said, we're all here together. Most of us are fairly successful, but we're obviously feeling this need for connection that doesn't exist anywhere else. Do you have this anywhere else? Do you have this anywhere else? No. Maybe this is a sign that there's a need for something more, because it's a pretty vulnerable thing. And this isn't exclusive to women, right? Will and Tyler, it's pretty vulnerable to say, I sometimes feel alone and I wish I had people to talk to. And I wish I had people who understood some of my unique challenges. And so we said, well, we got through breakfast. We had to go work the floor or walk the floor, whatever we're doing. And let's schedule a Zoom. And so we scheduled that for about 2 weeks later. And there was one lady who wasn't there in attendance that we invited. That was actually Hannah Hubbard. And the 9 of us got on and we were like, let's create a group with the sole purpose of connecting, encouraging, inspiring, supporting, and empowering women who work in our profession. We talked a lot about the name, but we decided that we didn't want the name to have women in it, because there have been so many men who've been very supportive. And if we're honest, we need to have everyone in this working together. So we came up with the Death Care Collective. So that was sort of how we got to the point of just getting to our name.
Awesome. I really like the name. I think
it's
actually really cool. Yeah.
We went back and forth, but we thought that said enough and kept people interested.
Exactly. You did a job well done on those.
Thanks. It was a collective effort.
No pun intended. Pun intended. No pun intended. Pun intended. Yes.
It sounds like it just came out of, it wasn't even planned. It just happened and just started to happen and kept happening.
It seems like the energy of the meeting itself that you ladies had on Zoom was palpable, and you couldn't ignore that. And that's what it seemed. It seems like the way you describe it after that virtual meeting, it's like, well, this is an obvious yes. Like whatever this is, it's a yes, right? And that's a cool feeling to have.
Yes. And it just reinforces that you're not alone. And so much of what we do every day is wanting to feel connected to other people, knowing that we're not alone, reminding other people they're not alone. And sometimes the things we're feeling, you just think, am I crazy? Is anyone else feeling this way? And you realize, no, I am not alone in this. And there are other people who not only feel this way, but we could help support one another.
So what would you say are some of your core values of the group?
Well, really the goal is to support, develop, empower, and inspire women within the space. So if it doesn't do those things, and we've had a lot of opportunities to do other things, and even that maybe we're excited about, or little passion projects, but we go, if it's not getting back to that really connecting, supporting, and inspiring women, then we don't do it. So after that initial meeting where we formed our name, we actually took about another 4 months before we announced to the world what we had done. We spent a lot of time, there's 9 of us with full-time jobs and families and lives. And we have taken the time out. We've volunteered this time, of course. We've loved every minute of it, but we were very deliberate and intentional about what we wanted it to look like. because it was scary. I think I can speak for everyone that there's some nerves when you, without any permission, there's never been a roadmap for this. No one's ever done anything like this. We are announcing to the world that we have started a group for women in death care to help support and empower women for the purpose of making our industry better, right? And here we go. What do you think? Do you want to join us? And then you just hold your breath and hope people don't laugh at you, right? Yes, exactly. And we had no idea how that would be received. And to this day, I think one of the things that each of us are most proud of is we knew people would judge our intentions about the group, right? Because there's so many things like this, and it's not bad, and it's nothing wrong, but quite often there's an ulterior motive, and you're kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, what's next? What are you going to ask for? What's the catch? Yeah,
right,
we all kind of know. And so we knew people would be judging our intentions and our motivations. And I think people were able to see very early on that we truly have no other intention, no other goal than to connect, support, inspire, empower women within the space. And it was so well received so quickly. And it has been incredibly humbling, and it's really been a fun journey. So that was over a year ago. That was the year last July that we officially launched. And we now have, we're redefining membership because we don't have a paid model. We can talk a little bit more about that. But on LinkedIn as an example, and this is women and men, but we have over 1,000 followers on LinkedIn. We have dozens and dozens of people kind of on our mailing list that are a part of it. And then we do our virtual events. So it's been very well received, which we are just so thrilled and grateful about.
What kind of virtual events do you host, Erin?
Yes. So we have all different topics. We pivoted from the book club model because we had for a while done that every month. And we decided to move that to a quarterly book club. And that might be anything from, we've done Brene Brown books or John Maxwell books. It's not women only authors, but anything that we'll sort of have the members nominate a book. And then we all sort of read it, and it gives people enough time to read it. But we've done events. So Robbie Poppy, as an example, she's with Carriage. She did a session on executive presence and what that means. We had a session with 3 of the top recruiters in the country within death care, from corporate and private, talking about the power of negotiation. Sandra actually had one of the professors from Gonzaga come on and teach a little bit about how to advocate for yourself and how to negotiate. We're doing one this month on imposter syndrome, which we all have in some area of our life. And sometimes, like during the holidays, we might just do a cocktails with the collective and make it more of a fun gathering. We've also done open office hours, kind of a ask us anything type of an event. So but again, we want it always to be educational, where there's some sort of takeaway and some sort of action item. So we've structured it where we always have about a 20-minute presentation, and then we go out into breakout rooms in Zoom so that we're able to have some more intimate discussions with anywhere from 3 to 5 people. And then we'll all come back together, the group of 25 to 50, however many it is, and have a larger group discussion at the end.
Cool.
I can tell that you put a lot of effort into making it engaging for everyone attending, which is the best thing you can do, gamifying the entire experience in education. Brilliant.
Yes, thank you. Yes, that's the goal, is just to make everyone feel like they belong and that we want them here and that they've found their people.
So what entails being a member right now?
So right now, if you follow us, support us, engage with us at any level on any of our social media platforms, as an example, or if you're on our email list, we consider you a member. You're a member of this community. You belong. We want you here. We recognize that, especially this younger generation of funeral directors and death care professionals who are predominantly women, it's easy for them to feel left out or sort of on the outside. And so we've tried to make it as easy as possible to make everyone feel like they're included. And we're currently in the process of formalizing that a little bit, so there's some clarity. So we've had people say, "Oh, I love your stuff. I attended your event, but I'm not a member." And no, you are. So we're working on the messaging around that. But if you've supported us, we consider you a member, and we are appreciative.
That's a great PSA for everyone who doesn't know that they're a member. You are.
Good news.
Yes. So as you started to bringing this together and, you started finding things that you felt were missing, like what were some of the main things that you felt that this kind of like what kind of problem did you find that this was solving? I know the loneliness and the vulnerability thing you talked about already, but on a more maybe professional sense.
Yeah. So we had one of our discussions where we had, we do these monthly and they'd probably been going at this point 6 to 8 months. And we were sort of wrapping up one of our discussions. And we asked the group, we said, what is it that you feel like would be most helpful to you? What do you need from this group? What would you like to see? And at least a handful of women very quickly said some version of, this is what we need. So not even from a place of loneliness necessarily, although that's definitely a part of feeling isolated. It was an opportunity to connect with other professionals in the space that otherwise they just would never have, because, you think about it, you've got the corporate groups, right? And not in a bad way, but you've got the SCIs and the foundation and all these corporate groups, and you have incredible people that work for those organizations. But generally speaking, if you work for an SCI, you may not have an opportunity to meet some of the women who work with, say, Parklawn as an example, because it's not bad. They just are doing their own thing and they're doing their own thing. And so sometimes it's just giving access to the energy, the mind, the learning from women sort of outside of those silos that otherwise you would just never have the opportunity to meet. So, and just for the purpose of connection, I think a lot of times people think, oh, I'm trying to leave or I'm trying to get, it's not for any of that. It's just, I just want to connect with other like-minded women and having that opportunity.
And that adherence to that philosophy is what makes it a safe space and very attractive for folks, I imagine. Right?
Yes. And we've made it very clear, while we all have day jobs, so to speak, people know what I do, and I'm not shy to tell people, but there's no part, I'm not recruiting, I'm not selling my wares, so to speak. We've had a few people that try to use our platform to pitch their goods. And we say, there is a space for that. This is not it. So while we want you to be very proud about who you are and what you do, this is not a place to come in and advertise whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah, kudos to you for protecting that. It's definitely the right choice, and really kudos.
Yeah, easier said than done sometimes, because we don't ever want to hurt people's feelings. So.
I imagine it's probably going to get harder as you guys grow. You're going to get more people.
Yes. When you have an audience, people want access to your audience. So we have an incredible social media team that's done a beautiful job with that.
Cool. Sounds fun to, it almost sounds like you've created yourself a second job now.
Yes. That's true. But I will say we decided early on, so there are 9 of us, right? And 9 very incredible, intelligent, powerful women that are very capable. And so we decided early on to break into 3 subcommittees. So we had the social media committee, which does a wonderful job, and they do a lot of and that's Jessica Lopez, who has a marketing background, Jamie Dravecki, who's been so great at our social media, and then Robin Seckler, and she also is very familiar with that space. So they've done a good job of creating the content. We all have input on that, but timing it out, responding, because you guys probably know, I don't need to tell you, social media just by itself can be a beast. And then we had an events committee that was responsible for scheduling, planning, marketing the actual events. And then, of course, just the overall planning and finance committee. So we were able to break it up where it didn't always feel so overwhelming, but it goes in ebbs and flows like anything. Luckily, we all love it. So that helps, because it does tend to give us energy. But yes, there are days, my husband has joked with me about that. So how's your second job going?
So what is the Death Care Collective like actively doing right now? And we could talk about maybe what your future plans are, but like right now, as you are supporting women in death care, what are you guys doing?
Yeah, so we are currently, we're fortunate, I believe it was the end of last year, ICCFA actually reached out to us and asked if we would be willing to collaborate with them on their fall leadership summit that they do every year. They're rebranding it a little bit this year. And so we've been working with them the last 6 months, but particularly the last 2 or 3 months on the Fall Leadership Summit in Tucson. I got to do a plug. Tucson, Arizona, October 24th through 26th. But it's going to be an incredible event. So a lot of our energy and time has been going into preparing for and marketing for that. And that's currently our focus. We also have our upcoming events through the end of the year. But we are recognizing, I think it was Robin Seckler on our team once said, when everyone's in charge, no one's in charge. And there's only so far you can go with kind of everyone just picking up where they can, because there are certain areas that we found. If I say, hey, Tyler, this is what I need you to focus on, you'll probably go run with it. But if Will thinks he's also supposed to be focusing on it, it can create some challenges. And you should be able to have freedom and autonomy to just run with it and get it done. And then Will has his area that he can focus on and get that done. So we've been able to create roles that make more sense as we're going forward, because really our goal, Tyler and Will, is for 2024 is to formalize and create our 501c3 so that we can have official nonprofit status, because like it or not, there's only so far we can go without money. And we've been very fortunate. We've had a number of groups and companies and organizations and individuals offer to support us and sponsor us. And we've been able to sort of make it work up to this point. But right now we're kind of at a place where we say we can't legally take your money. So we need to put ourselves in a position where we can get that funding. And ultimately, we would love to create opportunities for scholarships for women, for sponsorships for women, maybe some formalized mentorship opportunities. And there's so much that we can do, but we recognize that really has to be the next step. It's not easy or fast, but that is something we're focusing on looking into next year.
Awesome.
A lot of great initiatives, Erin.
Yeah,
it's
keeping us busy. Thank you.
I don't know. Like when I first heard about the collective, I almost saw you guys as like I don't want to say like a union, but like almost like something where you can advocate for workplace changes or advocate for, women in death care, as they are going to be the majority. However, it's a stark change from where it was, like I'd say 15 years ago or 10 years ago even, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I think this is a great step for just workplace advocacy. And I look at other friends in larger corporations, big tech corporations, and I hear them have much more open conversations about roles, responsibilities, compensation packages, and using their network to kind of figure out like what the landscape is. And I can see that kind of happening, or being a platform to do that with the Death Care Collective, like just encouraging transparency among these different companies by just bringing all their employees together and saying, am I getting what I'm worth? Is this valuable? I think that's really huge, at least for the kind of compensation part and advocacy part and negotiation part for folks in the future.
Yes, and I have never heard it. I've never heard the word union attached to it, but that actually makes sense, because, of course, there's power in numbers. But I want to share with you an example, and of course, I won't share who or any of that. But we had a lady reach out to us, and she had a pretty senior management role. And she said, I'm going to be meeting with my boss, and I want to negotiate for a pay raise. And I don't even know if I'm in the ballpark or if I'm crazy. And a handful of us from the founding members group, we really value confidentiality within our group. We protect that with everything we have. And she had asked me, but the role she was in was more operational. And so I connected her quickly with both Shannon Bischoff and Sandra Walker. And we were able to sort of say, if anything, you're sort of in the low range. Like, not only are you not bonko for thinking you should go here, we feel like you should nudge it even higher than that. And just that transparency and giving her some resources and knowledge about maybe start here. And now we want to make sure that you're doing what you need to do. Have you been hitting your metrics? Is there anything that might be coming back from your manager? But where else do you have a space like that you could have a really honest conversation? Because money is just so taboo. We don't talk about it. And I think that's a huge piece of it. I think there are a lot of, not just women, but there are a lot of people that if they really saw what they were worth and knew that, and then knew how to advocate for themselves, I mean, it could really be a game changer. And it's something we've taken a lot of pride in. Another example is around clothing. So it sounds so silly, but women, the funeral home and cemetery I started with, up until I think 2 years before I started with them, women weren't even allowed to wear pants if it was a service day. So, I mean, it's,
What a crazy
yeah.
thing.
And it was pretty standard. It's not like they were the one place that didn't allow it. But, I only started in this business 10 years ago. So it wasn't that long ago. And we've come a long way since then, fortunately. But there's still a lot of double standards. I've thought about, like, you guys could probably do a whole podcast on pockets, the double standard of pockets. But a lot of the clothing or uniforms for women maybe don't make sense for what they need. And are we really advocating for something? And it's not always pushing back against they're pushing us down. It's just educating their managers, even, because maybe they don't know and we don't have the words to say or know how to use our voice in a way that's constructive. So just coming together and having an open forum where it's a safe space to say, hey, I'm dealing with this at work and I need some help. How do I approach this? How would you approach this? And getting some honest, unbiased opinion and feedback from other women.
Yeah. And I think that's really important, and a big reason why, this is at least in the company, Parting Pro, this is like the biggest company that I've ever run or had, and the most people that I've ever managed. And, having multiple women working, my wife has sometimes reminded me, like, even things that I don't know I'm doing or things that I'm saying, there's challenges that I may not realize that they're facing that I wouldn't even think of sometimes, especially in the workforce or in the workplace.
Right. Yeah. When I started I actually came into this profession. I was in a difficult life transition. At the time, I was a single mother. And fortunately, I had a great boss, and that was fine. But I've heard stories of women who are single mothers that get very frustrated because they weren't able to leave to go to a doctor's appointment or something. And I always ask, did you share with your manager that that's why you had to leave? I mean, are you being honest about what's going on in your life? Because quite often, to your point, Tyler, if maybe you just don't know they're going through that, but if someone said, hey, Tyler, my son has been sick and the only time I can get in for this doctor's appointment is at 3:00, but if I have a family we're meeting, you probably would figure out a way to make that work. But quite often we don't know how to communicate our needs, or we just take on the burden of the world and suck it up.
Or even worse, Erin, we don't think that our boss cares about our needs, so we don't mention them.
Yes, right. And I would like to believe usually they would care if we'd be willing to share.
Right. And I think at some places people have tried sharing, and if they get pushback or maybe don't feel heard or listened, then eventually they just stop sharing.
Well, and this is what I'll say to that. So in an example, we've had versions of this where I'll say, let's say Tyler sounds like he'd probably be a pretty reasonable guy. Maybe try sharing it in this way without oversharing. And if Tyler says, I don't care about your sick son, I know Tyler never said that, figure it out, then the next conversation is, okay, this might not be the healthiest place for you to be working. Let's maybe try to figure out another solution. That hasn't happened a lot, but there are times where people realize, I tried to negotiate and have a conversation and I don't feel valued here. Then you're exactly right, Will, because if they don't feel safe sharing, then maybe that's not a safe place for them to be.
Right. Yeah.
Definitely interesting. So a little bit more about you. What it actually is your first job?
Yeah, my first job. So my day job here in my office, I'm the chief sales officer and partner at Envision Strategic Partners. So we're a pre-need marketing company. We're actually based out of Salt Lake City, Utah. We work now with about 120 funeral homes across the country. So a lot in your neck of the woods in California, all the way to Baltimore, and then, Wisconsin down to Texas. So we cover the whole gamut. But I am a pre-need sales nerd. I love everything about it. I could talk about that also all day, but I don't bring that much into the death care collective. There's very few people who outside of work are interested in hearing about pre-need sales. But I started in the profession selling at a local funeral home cemetery combo, an incredible organization, and had a really great boss. And his boss, the two of them actually started Envision Strategic Partners. I've worked with Envision since day one. I've been a part of it, but I had a really great opportunity several years ago to buy in as a partner. And so now it's the three of us. So West Folger and Spencer Larkin are my two partners.
Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank
Congrats.
you. Thank you. It's been very fun. I feel very grateful to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. No, I really liked when I saw the founders, it wasn't just, like you said, I mean, it wasn't just a bunch of vendors creating a collective. I mean, you have Sandra, you also had Shannon, who are actually in funeral service and working actively as, serving families. So
a lot of good minds.
Yeah. And a really diverse group. I mean, very diverse range of backgrounds and experience. And Robin Seckler is the example. She's in Pennsylvania. She works with Good Trust. But when she came to that breakfast, I think she had been with Good Trust less than 6 months. Had a business before, sort of in legacy and memories, but she came from outside the profession. So she's actually brought a lot of great insights because she hasn't been in it so long. So it's really been, I think, a huge benefit. But then you have, Shannon Bischoff on the other side, for example. She's done this for, 30 years, I think. Hannah-Laura Hubbard. Jessica comes from the marketing background. Jamie also had been a funeral director and then came into at Homesteaders. We have Tacey Vogel, who also came from pre-need. Tacey is actually one that I knew before. That's a separate story, but I worked with her and she's been a dear friend for years and years. So we just have a really great broad range of experience. And of course, Olga Peeler, who started it all and made that first connection on LinkedIn. So
awesome.
It's a cool story.
It's fun. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you, since you have been in death care for about a decade now, what are some of the major changes that you've seen happening over the past decade?
There's the obvious change of women coming in. You're hearing anywhere from 70 to 80% of mortuary science students are women. And I'll say that to people and they'll say it's 90. I mean, depending on where you are. Most people coming in are women. So a lot of times they'll hear about the Death Care Collective and they'll say, I don't know what you're talking about. We have 70% of our staff is women. Almost all of our funeral directors are women. And our immediate question is, how many of those women are in a leadership role, an executive role, or an ownership role? And you can imagine the response. They usually, it's usually small. It's not never. There are times, and again, I don't think it's anyone trying to prevent them from getting there. But I think women, there have been studies on this. Women aren't going to be the first ones to raise their hand asking for a leadership role. And if they don't see a path forward, or if they don't feel safe in asking, to your point, Will, then they'll kind of go inward and they feel like they're spinning on a wheel. And that's where burnout happens. And so I think one of the biggest threats to our profession right now is not just recruiting and placing good people, but keeping them.
Yeah, retention. We talk about that a lot on this podcast. I mean, Tyler, a lot of our episodes, probably almost half, we talk in some way about workforce retention and how it's not where it needs to be for the profession, and talking about tools that managers and owners can use to kind of level up that game. What do you see there? What do you find are the biggest triggers for someone leaving or getting burned out? How does that play out among the stories you've heard?
Well, there have been studies. I actually did a presentation last week, and about 87% of employees, especially that millennial generation, if they don't feel like there's opportunities for professional growth, professional advancement, they're not going to stay longer than 3 to 5 years. I also think there has to be some level of flexibility. And especially now, you think about, even if they're not parents, you think even if they're single people, married or not, but no kids, they want to have some work-life balance. Work-life balance is more important than a paycheck. If they don't feel like they have the ability to take the time off, recharge, especially the funeral directors. I mean, they have the weight of the world on their shoulders. And if they can't take a 3-day weekend every now and then and not worry about their phone blowing up while they're on a camping trip, how do we expect them to stay? I mean, they will be burned out in less than 5 years. We are going to lose them. And I will just say it. I mean, the managers and owners that have this attitude, if you can't hack it, then go find something else. Suck it up, buttercup. You better figure it out. It's only going to last so long. And they're going to have a really hard time keeping good people. And I've seen the firms we work with that have a staff that's been there for years and years. They allow for growth where needed. They are flexible with their time. They respect their staff. They make their staff feel valued. I think we put so much emphasis on pay. And while that's important, there's so many other things we can do to make people feel valued that we're just missing the boat. And my biggest fear is we're going to lose all these women that are coming in.
Yeah. Well, when we talked to Lily McMurrow, she said that, she mentioned those numbers too about the high matriculation of women coming out of mortuary science, but also that half of them aren't in the industry in 5 years after graduating. So and this is something that grinds my gears. It's like these people have taken the initiative to be the compassionate, empathetic, kind people helping families who are grieving. And that is what we've come here to do to a large extent. And because of no growth, not feeling heard, or poor management, they're not succeeding, and they're finding that leaving is their best choice of action. Because I think, to your point, they get in the industry and they don't see a path. And then that starts to settle in that, oh, wow, I'm on a road to a dead end. How long am I going to stay?
Right. And if you're not willing to embrace that as an owner, it's going to be real scary in 5 to 10 years, because that older generation is starting to retire. And I love Lily. She's shared the same thing with me. I mean, we have to be willing to look at it through a different lens than we did 10 years ago, 20 years ago, sure as heck 30, 40 years ago. Like, it is changing, and that means we're going to have to be adaptable. And it means the people in charge need to start listening and stop rolling their eyes, so to speak, saying they're just not tough enough. It's a different workforce, and the needs are changing, and we have to hear them.
I completely agree. And it's really simple. If you look to best practices for management and employee retention now, like, the answers are there. They're being implemented at companies already, and you can see how they do it and do it yourself. But it is that mentality that's still lingering, and it's to their own detriment, I think.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
So you've been engaging with, I'm assuming, newer entrants into death care, as well as some of the more senior ones. Are there any new challenges from maybe some of the newer entrants that surprised you, or that you heard that you personally didn't even see coming?
The biggest one was, so you have these young women, we'll just say it, that's the majority of who it is, coming in, maybe in their early to mid 20s, that have gone to mortuary science school, are just so excited, they're so passionate, but they don't know how to send an email. They don't know about some of the basic etiquette. I'm not saying this in a negative way, but no one has taken the time to teach them about some of the other tasks related to working in an office and those expectations. Now, it won't take long. They are very smart and they will catch on. But I've heard a number of our funeral homes, especially, saying, we assumed they had a certain skill set related to office work, separate from just meeting with a family that wasn't there. And I've had some thoughts around this, but just are we taking time to also train them? Because a lot of them are so young, they've never had a separate job. Now, we see a lot of people coming in on a second career that maybe have been in the corporate world, a teacher or veterans, and they, of course, have that background and history. But if this is their first or second job, they might not have that, and we need to not hold that against them. And then, instead of getting frustrated with teaching them some of those basic tasks, we have to make sure that we're giving them the training and taking the time, instead of, it's your first day, here's who we are, we've been in business 100 years, we're the best funeral home in town, go get them, Tiger.
I was talking to one of my buddies at Comcast and talking to him about how they train and onboard new hires. And he said flat out, they gamify the whole thing, and that's the only way they can do it. It is gamified to the max to keep engagement. Otherwise, they lose interest in 5 minutes. And of course, why wouldn't you? I think, from speaking from personal experience with Omega, there were no training manuals. There were no standard operating procedures written down when I arrived, everything like that. So training was sit at your desk and listen to everyone taking calls around you and put together how to price a first call and dispatch a driver and, like, don't screw it up. And you're like, oh, okay, figure it out.
And the last part of that is, and come to us with any questions, but it has been statistically proven women are less likely to raise their hand. They will be less inclined to say, hey, Tyler, I need help, where men are more inclined to do that.
And also, I want to point out that in a funeral home, how many funeral homes do you know where the manager is around, not on the phone most of the day, that you can ask questions to get a good answer? You can't. If you ask when you have a question, you be like, I'm busy, right? So it's really tough. It's really, really tough to be in. And I don't envy someone entering the workforce. And if you're expecting a lot of onboarding and training, make sure that you ask about that in the interview process. All right. If that's huge. Because I get why you're like, I get you. Because if you get into the industry, you want to help families. And if you get to a company and they're not training you, you're like, well, how can I believe that you're actually here to help families if you're not training me to help your families or our family? Right.
There's no quality control. Yes. And I think another place I've seen a big shift, obviously as we see cremations rise, I think we're really missing the mark on educating those families at the time, either pre-need or at need. I think we still sometimes there are funeral homes that go, oh, it's just a cremation, and we are not taking the time to educate and serve those families. You're both laughing. I'm in sales, and I look at sales as another version of educating. But the truth is, our funeral directors have to be prepared to educate, to sell. I'm going to say it. I'm sure I'll get pushback from that. But how can we truly serve these families if we're not educating them about their options? They're asking for just a direct cremation because they don't even know what their other options are. So just educating a little bit and then let the family choose. If it doesn't make sense for them, that is fine. But just take the time. Don't be so quick to get through to the next family. I think that's another area as a profession we need to get better.
I agree with that. I really agree.
I'm glad I'm not alone.
No, you're not alone. And I will say, full disclosure, I think I'm a perpetrator of that, unfortunately, at times. And
I think we all have been.
Right. And we don't, and those are the times in my professional career where I wasn't as happy with my level of service to family. Part of that was, when you're drinking from a fire hose, like you can just only do the best you can. Like, and a lot of that was COVID volume. So
yes, and you're burned out and you aren't sleeping, you're not eating, and you're doing the best you can, but the awareness of it is a good first step. So I'm glad I'm not alone in that.
Okay, so you have the ICCFA thing coming up. Looks like the financial and business setup is coming as well. Is there anything else we can be looking forward to from the collective that you can share with us today?
Yes. So one of the biggest things will be soon, by the end of the year, be able to announce more about the membership levels like we had talked about, whether it's a follower, a member, a supporter, what that looks like, because I think there are a lot of people who want to help. We've been very closely connected with folks at NFDA. We were part of the Professional Women's Conference. We ran a workshop there in San Antonio earlier this year. Kana, Barbara, and the team have been very supportive. So we will continue to work very closely with all of the associations and organizations. We've been so grateful for their support. So right now we're working on the membership. And then as we work towards our 501c3, talking more about some mentorship opportunities. We want to make sure we're doing that right. We don't take lightly the trust that's placed when you say you're going to mentor someone. We want to make sure that's done right. And those are the things we'll be working on next year.
Awesome,
Erin.
So, Erin, we always like to ask our guests, because everyone has their own perspective on death care. They've all had their own experiences, which led them up to this point. Where do you see death care going in the next 10 years?
Well, I just got goosebumps hearing you ask me that. I hope it's going in a direction of education and service, focusing on the families. But I think it has to start first with us better supporting our team, our employees, our funeral director staff, our support staff, and helping them feel encouraged, supported, educated, and prepared to serve those families. And, we talk about external customers versus internal customers. So, of course, the external customer is the client families, but our internal customers are the funeral home staff, the cemetery staff. And if we're not supporting them first, then that will not trickle out to the families. And it's important, to your point, Will, I'm sure if anyone ever sat down and said, what level of service would you like your families to receive? It would be beautiful what you would say. But when you're feeling burned out and you're at the edge of your rope, there's only so much. It's the oxygen mask thing. If we're not taking care of ourselves first. So I hope we get better at that. And I think that means we're all going to have to start listening better to each other. That's what I always come back to. We need to start listening. And the people that have been in this for 30, 40 years, that their great granddaddy started a place a long time ago, and this is how we did it back in the 50s. While we definitely have a lot to learn from that, there's also a lot that has changed. And we need to start listening to people to get where we need to get in the future.
Well put.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. So where can people find more about you or more about the collective?
Yes. So we're on all the socials, as I like to say. So LinkedIn, anyone can follow us on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest place to find when we have upcoming events. We also have great conversations or information posted there. Our Facebook group is exclusively for women or non-binary individuals who work in death care. So we've had people try to get in that we've done some research and we can't find any connection to anyone. And so we'll message them, but that's more of a private group. We joke that's the one that kind of Vegas rules apply. What happens in that group stays in that group. It's very confidential. We've had some really great discussions or people maybe asking for advice. And then there's also a public Facebook page, but Facebook is really more of the closed group. And then Instagram, of course, but LinkedIn is probably the best place. I'm, of course, there personally, but for the Death Care Collective, that's where you would find us. And then if you would like any information, you can message us on LinkedIn or any of those channels, just an email address. This is for anyone, women or men. And then we will add you to our email list. Usually all we're going to email is the links to upcoming events if you'd like to attend one of our virtual events or our in-person events. And then, of course, our website is deathcarecollective.com. So just deathcarecollective.com. And all of that information is at our website as well.
Awesome.
Thanks for sharing.
Feeling kind of left
Thanks
out.
for asking.
Just kidding. Cool. Well, thank you, Erin. I really appreciate you talking about this. I like I mentioned before, I really do think that you guys can do a lot of good with your mission and what you're pushing, because there's going to be a big change and it's coming, or if it's not already here, but it's coming.
It's here.
Yeah. I definitely think it's much needed. Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. We see it too, and we just want to be part of it. We're not the only solution. We're not the answer, but we want to be a part of that, and we want to help continue to connect the people who will be part of that solution, because we think it's important and it's worthwhile.
Awesome.
It definitely is. The best is yet to come for y'all, so this is great.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. We feel that way as well.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll wrap it up here. Thank you for listening for the Direct Cremation Podcast. I'm Tyler Yamasaki with my co-host, Will DeMichaelis. Thank you, Erin. We'll catch you guys next time. Thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you ever want to know more, please find us at directcremation.com.